Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 16 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Alex Russman, head of the Consumer Engagement Metaverse Fund at the HBAR Foundation, and we'll be talking about the future of NFTs, virtual worlds, and cross-chain interoperability, but also about Hedera and the HBAR Foundation. So, thank you for joining me today. It's nice to have you.
Thank you, Alex. Pleasure to be here.
Great. So if we can start out with just what your background is in crypto and life and how you came to be where you are.
Okay, so I guess not to go back in history too far, I guess my professional life was kind of forged working for a management and technology consulting firm called Accenture in London in the UK. And I left Accenture in 2016 very much with the intention of getting my hands dirty with this blockchain technology. I wanted to be a part of the movement and be close to technology, which I knew was going to be very impactful across multiple industries. And it was something that large enterprises like Accenture just weren't going to be quick to move on. I ended up living in Vietnam for 2 years after leaving London, and during that time, I actually met a lot of crypto projects based out in the APEC region, and through those relationships became familiar with a company called Engine. And when I ended up moving back to Europe and Berlin, I connected with the Engine team and became their head of business development. A really, really fantastic project. If you haven't come across Engine, they did an ICO back in 2017. And since before then have been thinking about NFTs in terms of how they relate to the gaming space, but also beyond that, just driving NFT standards across the EVM ecosystem with ERC 1155 and just building wallets, tooling, infrastructure that's really, really pushed the whole industry ahead. So that was an amazing formative experience entering into the crypto space more professionally. And then in February of last year, I joined the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem, working directly for Hedera Hashgraph LLC. And then I moved to, with most of the business development team, to the HBAR Foundation, which was launched in September of last year. And the HBAR Foundation, you can really see as the business development wing of the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem. It's the largest grant-giving entity in the whole blockchain / DLT space, which is incredibly exciting for the industry and also for the Hedera Hashgraph ecosystem. So I get to spend a lot of time interacting with new projects across many different spaces and meeting incredibly interesting people.
Awesome. Very cool. Great. Yeah. So for those who are not yet familiar with Hedera and the HBAR Foundation, can you maybe explain in layman terms what Hedera is and how it tries to set itself apart from competitors?
So even with kind of newcomers and laymen, I usually do start with a technical distinction. Hedera is on the technical level not a blockchain, but something called a hash graph. And so we'll often refer instead of blockchain to the kind of the parent category of distributed ledger technology, DLT. But because blockchain is the shorthand in this space, also blockchain slips into the vocabulary there. However, it's really key that we're not a blockchain. It's a difference in data structure, but essentially instead of having these groups of transactions, these blocks appended to previous groups, creating this chained history, Hashgraph is something we call a gossip about gossip protocol. It's a means of having computer nodes in a network communicate with one another, whereby when they send a message with new information between nodes, they include in that transaction a hash, a sort of summary of information they've received from other nodes. So when I, Alex Russman, send to you a transaction with new information, I'm also going to include information I've learned from one of my colleagues, from my brother, from my sister. And so you're updated and you're able to propagate information very, very quickly through the network and achieve consensus very quickly with a high level of security. And Hashgraph was invented by the Hedera co-founder, Dr. Lehman Baird, who was really looking to solve over a period of several years the problem of achieving consensus at scale. And that kind of core technology of Hashgraph has been packaged up into an enterprise grade. That's kind of enterprise grade scale, stability, governance that can be utilized by anyone from small to large projects.
Okay. So on that vein, why should new projects be interested in building on Hedera?
Well, when Hedera was first announced to the world as a network, it was positioned as a third generation distributed ledger technology, building on the achievements of Bitcoin and Ethereum in the past. Bitcoin introducing these digital assets, Ethereum bringing in smart contracts and this sort of Cambrian explosion of different tokens. And Hedera was really saying that this DLT, this blockchain space, is going to have a huge amount of legitimate interest. Large enterprises and organizations are going to want to engage with these DLT networks. And in order to meet that interest, you need a network that's architected from the ground up for enterprise needs. And so we'll often speak about this sort of enterprise grade technology and governance we offer. That doesn't mean it's just for enterprises. The network is a public network that anyone can build on. We have small community projects right through to large conglomerates building on Hedera. But it really is about meeting that kind of high level of demand from enterprises around technology. So Hashgraph gives us a very high throughput. We currently throttle the network to 10,000 transactions per second, for example. Those transactions have very low latency. We keep it below 5 seconds, average about 3 seconds, and you have immediate finality as opposed to blockchain, where it takes a bit longer to see those transactions fully processed. And also key for enterprises and long-term operations is predictability around pricing. So every transaction on the network has a fixed price fixed in US dollars value, paid in the underlying HBAR cryptocurrency. But that means as an organization, you know that if you're doing 1 million of a specific transaction in 6 months, it will cost 1 million times 100th of a cent, for example. In addition, Hashgraph is incredibly performative, which means that there's a low environmental footprint from those transactions. And we've also processed more than 2 billion transactions on the network. So very stable, very battle and stress tested. But a lot of networks are competing in that sort of technology and performance space. I would say Hedera really does have an edge in the stability, and that can maintain throughput when you kind of look at the performance history. But for me, the more exciting angle and the part that really speaks to attracting enterprises and projects with a really stress on the longevity of their aims is the governance piece. So Hedera really approached as an organization building this network with a view that people care about who owns and operates a decentralized network. And the answer is the Hedera Governing Council. And the Hedera Governing Council is modeled after the original Visa Council and will be made up of, eventually be up to 39 enterprise members who decide on the roadmap, the features, the treasury, the fees on the network. And we approach decentralization in I think the most effective way. So we believe that you can't have transparency with anonymity. You need to know who is operating the nodes, who is making decisions, and how they make those decisions. And we're decentralized by geography. We have council members across 6 continents now, and we're targeting 11 industry sectors as well as universities and NGOs to prevent collusion within the network. Often when you look at mining pools or developer groups or kind of staking interests with other networks, you don't know who they are. They're quite a small group. And in many cases, they could be the same group or the same person, just in different kind of geographical or technical placements. And then another aspect which doesn't always get so much attention is we really aim for technical decentralization. We push council members to not run all of their nodes on Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure because, again, you need that technical decentralization of the network. So for me, the more I've learned about Hedera, Hashgraph, and there's always going to more to learn. It's falling down the rabbit hole as everything in crypto. It answers all those questions. And when I talk to enterprises, the business development side is very easy because they're saying, who uses the network? We have council members like Google, LG, who is behind the governance? There's these huge names. EDF is tokenizing carbon credits on the network. And how does it impact the environment? All these questions are already answered. And so extended answer, but there's a lot happening and a lot to sell the Hedera network on.
No, yeah, that was great. There's definitely a lot of information there, but I really appreciate it. Very interesting. Okay. Yeah. So as you kind of said, you've got definitely a lot of different hands in the pot, as you might say. So obviously collaborations and partnerships are hugely important, especially with improving adoption. So what can you tell us about Hedera's current partners, plans for partnerships, and where everybody what they can gain from these partnerships?
So at the HBAR Foundation, our purpose, our remit is really to disperse into the Hedera ecosystem in the form of grants, several $1 billion of HBAR. And the way we approach that is having different funds within the foundation with budgets to target specific areas. And I lead the consumer engagement / metaverse fund, which means my focus is building out the ecosystem on a kind of technical level as it relates to NFTs and sort of tokenization projects and standards. And then on the business side, you could see it being application focused for targeting gaming, esports, fashion and consumer brands, media and entertainment, and then sports, as well as enterprise metaverse, which kind of speaks to the middleware and infrastructure being built around token management. So those are the partnerships that I focus on. We're really building a strong ecosystem around tokens. So you can look at technical pieces like wallets, explorers, marketplaces, that we're really looking to have a strong and stable selection within the ecosystem. And then in terms of the consumer-facing projects, like other networks, you're really driving to see sort of games and projects that bring users into the Hedera network and the ecosystem. So those are my focus areas. In terms of partnerships, we often get stuck at the foundation between working with partners who want to time that announcement perfectly, but then they also time the announcement with the foundation and that kind of official partnership perfectly to align with their own aims, but they also want to shout about how they're embracing Hedera technology. So projects like ACT and Neobank, actually been advising for a long time. They were talking about using Hedera's technology, and I was saying, well, we haven't announced this partnership, so you're kind of stealing the wind for my sails. Another great project, Reveal, is currently their token is lined up to launch on Launchpool, a launchpad, which will be the first Hedera token they support. Again, Reveal is just super excited to be working with Hedera Consensus Service as well as the Hedera Token Service, and they're using the technology, they're releasing a token, but we still haven't made a partnership announcement because we don't know how that aligns with their kind of business activities. So often, and I'll shout out to Hedera community members like Danny Ide and Sepsi, they're the ones who are kind of like detectives, and they find these projects. I'm talking to most recently, Sale Finance, a great Belgian team kind of building a Salesforce, so CRM solution for NFTs, which is hugely exciting. And that was spotted by the community before at the foundation we could go, hey, look, we've got this great project and this great sort of roadmap ahead. So I definitely say in terms of partnerships, following kind of core members of the Hedera community, that will give you a good sense of inbound projects. In terms of alpha leak kind of stuff, there are some pieces I'm confident we will surprise the community with in the coming 2 months. There's 2 great new gaming ecosystem partners, and we'll also be providing more news around the partnership we have with Ubisoft. 2 fantastic esports platforms will be launching as well in the next 2 months. So that's something that the community and the broader sort of world can engage with in terms of very usable, consumer-friendly NFTs and esports stars. And then fashion is something that I've always had a passion for. In the previous life, I had a fashion NFT startup. And this is an area where your brands want to have tokens live on networks, and then they need to be supported by other applications. And we have an amazing kind of luxury brand, B2B player, who will be issuing a huge number of NFTs on the network. And that's something that I'm very excited to speak about. I know everyone hates announcements about announcements, but want to sneak in a bit of alpha leak, as well as obviously attacking the sports area and building out more kind of partners like Sale, who are enabling businesses to embrace tokens in more advanced ways than just issuing an image against an NFT on the network. So jumping around a bit there, but my fund is all about user acquisition and grabbing lots of adoption through brands.
Definitely. Great. Again, loads of information, just that one go. I love it. Awesome. Thanks. So great. I'm going to bring it to one partner specifically. So in one of our previous talks on Venly Expert Talks, we had Jesse from Hashport as a guest. Can you take us over that specific relationship between Hashport and Hedera and how you expect it to evolve?
Yeah, so Hashport is a fantastic project, and it's really important for the Hedera ecosystem in terms of connectivity to other networks. So Hashport bridges Hedera to Ethereum and to Polygon, and this allows us to access other ecosystems, their assets and their liquidity. So Hashport is key for the launch of the scale up of DeFi on the Hedera network. We upgraded our smart contract service at the start of this year, and we have a highly performative Ethereum virtual machine, EVM, now running on the Hedera Hashgraph network. And so that enables us to see the explosion of DEXs, AMMs, kind of unique sort of financial and composable instruments appearing on the network. And of course, assets and liquidity need to come in, and they'll be bridged across Hashport. So very excited to see that happen. Hashport is also developing great capabilities for NFT bridging, which also impacts my interest area. And I think where Hashport will evolve will be seeing a huge amount of assets held on that bridge, moving both ways back and forth to Polygon, Ethereum. We'll see other networks being supported by the bridge as well. We've already had a great security audit from Omnisia, obviously with hacks like the wormhole hack. Audits are very key, and Hashport will be doing kind of more audits to provide that confidence, as well as building out the validator node network for current community of nodes is really fantastic, high profile projects. Again, bringing their reputation to proving the stability of the bridge. So Hashport, fantastic. I'm really excited for the potential there.
Great. Perfect. So then I guess the other thing here is you already kind of gave us some sneak peeks into stuff that's going to be happening. Is there any exciting news for the HBAR Foundation right now that you can share with us?
I think for me, the most exciting thing in terms of the network is the smart contracts service. I think this is something which is really important for projects, especially in terms of launching their own tokens, fundraising, engaging with the community, launching DAOs, being able to fundraise for your blockchain game. So smart contracts as a technical feature on the network is a really big deal. On top of that, you can have an EVM running on the network, but you need the developer tooling. So I think that's something developers, community alike should be following and very excited by pieces of Ethereum developer tooling being brought over to the Hedera network. We have a fork of libraries like Ether.js, which is launching on Hedera as Heather or Heathers JS. We've got a fork of Hardhat, working closely with the Waffle team, and all of these pieces of tooling that make it easy to interact with the smart contract service. Very, very excited about that, and developers are excited about that because they can more seamlessly leave the other EVM networks and come and enjoy the speed and performance and low fees of Hedera. In terms of the Hedera, the HBAR Foundation, the Consumer Engagement Fund business area, I'm really excited just by the explosion of interest and by the kind of core sort of flagship projects that we have in the gaming, fashion, sports, and enterprise metaverse space. We're really looking to have these very high level, very scalable use cases to drag in businesses, both small and large, as well as work with agile, smaller teams to see kind of innovation being shipped very quickly and agilely.
Okay. Wonderful. On that note, then I'm going to kind of pivot us more towards the main topic of today's talk. So starting out with kind of a general question, what do you feel are the main benefits of blockchain interoperability?
I think in terms of interoperability, where we're at now, a lot of blockchain networks are in a sort of nascent phase. They're still building a community, maybe even still working towards a sort of industry-specific focus. So the interoperability between blockchains is important to be able to have assets move around, have projects be able to be a bit more fluid and migrate around networks to see your partnerships and collaboration. And it might be that a specific blockchain gaming network pivots into a more financial instrument, and assets will kind of move around as we see these blockchain networks evolve in different ways. So I think that kind of composability of the infrastructure is key. The other side to that is also around standardization. We're seeing your dominant standards within the EVM space around tokens like ERC20, ERC721, ERC1155. It's important that networks don't advance in pure isolation, because we will see closer collaboration, and we want to see industries embrace DLT technology and not see fragmentation when they arrive to these multiple networks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Many metaverse projects claim that they are interoperable. Why do you think that they place this as such a high-level USP, and do you think they really are interoperable at this point?
I think the aim around building the metaverse is this interconnectivity, really kind of acknowledging different assets and acquisitions across different platforms and places. That's a rough definition of the metaverse as I see it. The ability to have your Steam achievements on the gaming platform there be acknowledged and recognized on LinkedIn as credentials. And that's really what metaverse projects at the moment are trying to do. They're trying to say, look, if you win this asset or this credential in one area, we're going to acknowledge it in our space. And that kind of interconnectedness leads to interoperability in terms of, does the magic sword in one game also function as a magic sword in another? And that touches on questions about game developers' willingness to support an external asset, to go to added work to see that translate across different spaces. So in the same way that you need to bridge an asset from one network to another, you need to translate it across technologies and standards. Metaverses are going to struggle with that interoperability piece of how do I make a piece of digital fashion in a 2D mobile game work in an advanced 3D game, and not just about changes in game engine, but also art style. So this is for Dream, and it obviously speaks a lot to the use of blockchain. If you're launching a game with blockchain assets, the immediate utility is being able to trade the assets outside the game and not have the assets stored on a centralized game server. But beyond that, the most utility that speaks to the majority of the population who perhaps don't at the moment care too much about where the custody of these assets sits is the ability to take the asset to another space. And I think for the media entertainment and brand space, it's about being able to reach consumers directly rather than having to go through a Fortnite lockdown centralized database.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that kind of leads me into the next thought here. So what do you think about celebrities and big brands getting into the NFT market?
I think it's a very, very logical move. I think all of these celebrities and brands, they're seeing the amount of value that they provide to platforms like Instagram and Spotify and YouTube. And they're building these communities within those platforms, but it's hard to take those communities outside the platforms. So the example I like to give is a few years ago, Nike launched a digital-only sneaker in Fortnite, and that was a great way to access perhaps new Nike fans or existing Nike fans and give them something within the Fortnite game. But how do you then approach that kind of new consumer base, people holding these digital sneakers elsewhere? And the beauty of doing that on the blockchain would be that all of those digital sneakers exist as NFTs, and the people who have acquired them in Fortnite can then go to another game, maybe PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, and they can then be acknowledged by that game as having this Nike shoe. Nike are obviously incentivized there because they're giving added value to this asset, and they're also having brand ambassadors who are going to carry that Nike swoosh to different platforms. And then when those consumers eventually circle back round and come to something like the Nike Digital Store, the Nike Digital Store can see that they have been on this journey, can see that they're loyal brand ambassadors and consumers, and can unlock something special special for them, acknowledge that history in the store with perhaps a special design or a physical shoe that they can order. So it really is about being able to unlock your fans and your branded followers away from different platforms and see that interconnectivity bring them back to you when you need them. So Nike recently acquired Artifact, which is perhaps the pioneer in this kind of digital sneaker movement. I advise a company in the project called Metaverse Me that collaborated with Atari and Artifact on their Artifact sneaker drop, which works across multiple different metaverse spaces like Sandbox and Decentraland. There's another company called The Fabricant, which is a pioneer in digital fashion. I think one of the world's first digital-only fashion houses. And they did a blockchain dress a few years back, and then worked with myself when I was at Engine to also do a collaboration with Atari. And I think these are the innovators in terms of creating digital collectibles, which are now being linked to augmented reality and taken into different spaces. The fascinating area to follow is how something like digital fashion can be interoperable, how you can have the same fit and flow of the fabric on different avatars or in different virtual spaces.
Yeah, very good. So kind of in that same vein, what are your maybe personal favorite NFT projects? Could also be infrastructure.
Oh, that's a tough one. Put on the spot there. I think Venly is obviously shout out to Venly Expert Talks. I've known the Venly team for a long time, but on an infrastructure basis, I think Venly is interesting because of this multi-chain approach where consumer has a wallet, and inside that wallet they have multiple assets sitting on different networks. And I think this is the other side to interoperability and interconnectivity, where instead of using bridges to move the assets around, you have a wallet which can hold multiple NFTs on across multiple networks, and you see them acknowledged and supported within a game. So you're not having to move your Polygon assets to Hedera or Hedera assets to Ethereum, because the game can look into the wallet and see the assets across those three networks. And the comparison I give to the gaming space is when you log in to play Call of Duty online, you don't really care whether that game takes place on the French server, the Italian server, the UK server. They're all legitimate, and you mainly care about the performance. So definite shout out to Venly in terms of advancing that multi-chain sort of interoperable use case. In terms of NFT projects, I'm a big fan of in the Hedera space. Definite shout out to Hashpack, which is a fantastic wallet project. Just an incredible your design team, and just allowing people to access the technology intuitively is really, really meaningful. Also Hash Access, a leading NFT marketplace. Again, doing fantastic things really close to the technology and contributing to the developer community on Hedera, but also great eye to design. And I'm all about accessibility and adoption. New users have to find an easy and a great on-ramp into this technology, NFTs they want, and easy ways to acquire them. So that would be the infrastructure piece. And then personal shout out to Metaverse Me, because that's a really cool avatar project that I'm excited to see scale up, and using the tech stack from Ready Player Me, which is also doing interoperability around avatars and building in NFT use cases. So now I'm just kind of naming things that but also, it's very hard when you're doing BD. Every project you talk to is to some extent your baby, and you don't want to have, you don't have preferences between them, because they're all just teams doing fantastic things in their own spaces.
Yeah, and I can imagine you get.
And apologies if I've missed anyone. And now I'm going to get loads of Twitter messages saying, hey, you forgot to mention us. So I'll perhaps have to do an apology tweet storm.
You can send me a bunch of links afterward. I'll put them in the podcast notes. All right, great. So we first had the token boom. Now we see the NFT hype. What do you think will be the next big thing? Everyone's
talking a lot about DAOs and DAO tooling. I think that probably is the current hype right now. I'm definitely very bullish around the tooling aspect, making DAOs more accessible for people to engage in. We see with contemporary events right now, Ukraine DAO and the Ukrainian government Twitter account doing airdrops to build that community. And I think there's so much to explore in that space in terms of people want to contribute and see some acknowledgement and reward for that. And it really doesn't need to be much more than a token, a collectible, but it really drives community building. And I think DAOs are a space where there's a lot of kind of innovative thinking going around, and making their kind of structure be more effective in terms of how you contribute and how you get rewarded. So yeah, DAOs, I think they are the current hype, but that's very much on my mind.
Fair enough. Okay. So yeah, what other interoperability focused projects are on your radar that you think will bring a lot of value to the space right now, or what opportunities do you see?
I think in terms of interoperability bringing value, definitely the bridges, and another shout out perhaps to a company called Alliance Block, which is a cross network DeFi project, as well as doing NFT bridging, and everything runs on the Hedera consensus service, which is very exciting, and I think we'll be seeing more of the Hedera technology side. So bridges and interoperability, just to see those assets, you find the best network to sit on. And then beyond that, I'm really excited about the technology that allows companies to interact with tokens. So to speak to Sail Finance, this Belgian company that's building on Hedera, they have a CRM solution, a sort of Salesforce solution, that work with large enterprises to enable things like loyalty points and reward systems. And this is really what's going to drive enterprise adoption of tokens, when you can have permissions and team management, because you don't want some junior employee to accidentally send out all of your NFTs, because this isn't digital commerce where you can just magically spring up new assets. They're programmed into the network to have a fixed supply. It's much more akin to physical commerce through Amazon, where you have warehouses and supplies and stocks. So having the interfaces to be able to create these assets, and then permission systems to issue them in the right places, and then have tokens flow out into the ecosystem and then come back to things like restaurant apps and loyalty management programs. That's perhaps not interoperability in the kind of sense of different networks combining, but really about the B2B interoperability. How can we have tokens fit into existing businesses and structures, both in terms of the software applications they use, and in terms of how they have team structure within their company. Mm-hmm. There's going to be a big upskilling movement around tokens and DLT, and it needs to be really accessible to enterprises to engage their existing teams with.
Definitely. Great. Yeah, on the same train there. Specifically, what opportunities do you see for Web3 builders to make a big impact right now?
That's a very big question. I think in terms of making an impact, definitely contemporary events with Ukraine DAO, and the engagement from that kind of token reward system. I think that's something that comes to mind immediately in terms of making an impact. And more broadly, DAOs, I think, are going to be really effective ways of engaging communities, directing attention to different causes, and having people feel that it's more than just clicking a button. It's an armchair activism of liking something or sending a donation. There is a reciprocal action that acknowledges that engagement in the community. And so we'll see a lot of charitable causes and community engagement done through DAOs and token projects. Beyond that, it's not the focus area of my fund, but we have an incredible sustainable impact fund at the foundation run by my colleague Wes. And really broadly across the Hedera ecosystem, sustainability is a feature of applications beyond just the core layer one performance. As I mentioned, EDF is tokenizing carbon credits on Hedera, and we're really seeing the infrastructure to manage sustainability tokens and carbon credit tokens in the most advanced way that we can really see across the industry right now. So Web3 and fighting climate change and what Hedera is doing in that space is something I can't speak too highly of, and also I can't speak to in too much detail because it really is pushing the boundaries of of industry knowledge. So definitely worth jumping on anything that my colleague Wes speaks about. It's really fascinating.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah, we've touched on kind of all the major points that I wanted to get to. Is there anything you feel like we left out?
No, that was pretty conclusive. I definitely want to thank you for inviting me on. Want to thank Venly for being a fantastic partner, and looking forward to making announcements with the projects that have incorporated the Venly wallet and market. We'll see those coming out in the coming months. Again, apologies for announcements about announcements, but anyone listening who's interested in learning more about the Hedera network, do reach out. I love talking about the technology and NFT use cases. And also do check out the HBAR Foundation, do look at our grants program, do send in an application, because we're building fast and furiously across the ecosystem, and things are developing at a pace which I haven't really experienced in any other project. So very, very excited for the future.
Great. Intriguing. Great. So my very last question, who should we have on Venly Expert Talks next? You've obviously mentioned a lot of different companies today, a lot of different projects. Is there anyone specifically that you think would add a lot of value here?
That is a very good question. Is there a specific area you're interested in? I mean, there's a ton of interesting people, to be honest. As my answer, I'll go for two projects which I've mentioned and been speaking to most immediately. So the bias is a temporal one rather than any favoritism. There's a project called Reveal, which is launching their token on Hedera and using the consensus service to support the encryption services they offer. And they do watermarking for physical and digital goods. And this is going to be paired with NFTs in a fascinating manner, because NFTs show that proof of ownership, and you trace the history and the provenance of an asset, but you need watermarking to prove that this is the original asset, that it isn't a screenshot, that it isn't a JPEG, that someone hasn't taken a picture of the Mona Lisa and just been the first to stick that onto an NFT. So really excited by what they're doing with this technology and how it relates to NFTs. And then, because Venly's based in Belgium and Sale Finance is also based in Belgium, I'd say talk to the Sale team. I love their thinking. We're already seeing people talking about NFTs being the new CRM, and the way the Sale team are kind of bringing their knowledge and expertise around the B2B offering of CRM technology and customer engagement to the tokenization space, just for small test integrations they've done with the Hedera token service and consensus service, and how they're approaching the smart contract service. I'm very excited about that team, and we'll be publishing more information about them. But in this informal podcast setting, big fan, and I think they would speak to a different use case area very, very well.
Wonderful. Great. Well, thank you very, very much for taking time today to talk to me, and I look forward to hopefully someday meeting you in person.
Well, not that very far. I'm based in Berlin, and you're based in Stuttgart, I think. But yeah, from the UK, hence the accent, as I say on far too many calls.
Fair enough. No, good. All right. Well, then, thank you very much.